Well, in a sense, this kind of ties into what I wanted to discuss right now. We were talking about infrastructure earlier, and a lot of infrastructure, improvements and repairs do happen after natural disasters. I mean, obviously, Houston is going to be going through a huge cleanup. After Katrina, the rebuilding of the levees and water control systems and that sort of stuff in New Orleans was an infrastructure project there in New Orleans, and those have to be done quickly, and they're somewhat reactionary, because obviously, you got to get people back on the roads. You got to get buildings back up and running. Power plants got to get running, and so your kind of, let's call them emergency infrastructure projects come into place, and this stuff gets done. But it probably, I'm suspecting, gets done probably the same way it was done before, because the plans are already in place. We don't have to rethink it. We know how to build a road. We know how to build a building. We know how to build a power station. Just go and rebuild them, right? So my question is this: if we go back to Laurel's idea, or the idea she was positing, that we really need to be researching and understanding sustainable and resilient, environmentally, let's say, in this case, environmentally resilient infrastructure, shouldn't we be doing that now? And the question is, should the government be pushing it, or maybe be at the forefront of it? So in other words, and put this another way, so if the government is going to, let's say, earmark X billions of dollars for infrastructure, should they, and this is the question, should they say, and that infrastructure will have to meet certain sustainable / environmental / resilience characteristics? In other words, not just the same old infrastructure, but better. And should that be mandated? Now, the reason I ask this question, that's obviously going to be more expensive. So if you've got a limited pot of money, here's this billions of dollars, we can do this much regular infrastructure, as we've always done it, or we can do this much sustainable infrastructure. Which decision do you make?
So is your question, should we make that decision, or will that decision be made?
I'm saying, should we?
Yes, absolutely, we should be.
Even though that you're going to get less initial bang for your buck.
Yeah, because it's long term, you're going to get way more value for that, I would imagine. I mean, if it's done properly, if I understand what Laurel's talking about properly, that the resiliency, the sustainability of that building is going to make it so that it won't need
repair or replacement.
As much repair later.
And
as we know, I mean, and as Arun said in his piece, you're going to have these things are going to happen. I mean, you're going to have earthquakes, you're going to have hurricanes, you're going to have tornadoes, you're going to have this stuff happen. So it's inevitable, so you might as well invest the money now, and so that over the course of, let's say, 50 years, if you have to rebuild it so much less 2 or 3 times, you may have to totally rebuild it 2 or 3 times in 50 years.
Right.
Or maybe you just rebuild it once the right way for more money the first time, and then you spend less over the other years. Now, but the second part of my question to you was, will they? No, this government won't. I mean,
or pretty much any government. I mean,
yeah, some governments have more of a tolerance for that. Some governments have more of a tolerance for long-term planning, sustainability. Others are really focused on getting it done cheap and filling and flying. And again, I hate to politicize this stuff all the time, but I mean, no, that will not happen in this bill.
Some of that also is pushback, though, right? I mean, so if you go to industry, and so you're a government contractor, and you're working for doing some sort of infrastructure project, and you've got your way of doing things,
right?
And now the government says, we won't give you this contract unless you meet this, and this. The industry's going to scream.
Yeah, they're going to complain, and we know that the regulatory environment today is such that those things will never fly. But no, they will scream, but they'll ultimately do it. The inspectors will validate it because they want the contract. So I mean, they're going to do it eventually, and it's going to be better for them anyway. They're going to scream and complain, but they're going to learn things that are going to be much more valuable for them going forward in terms of how they build. I mean, the bills that are coming right now that are going to support Harvey relief, and I'm sure they're going to attach Irma relief on that.
Sure.
And they're going to attach the debt ceiling thing.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be so much pork in those things. If you ever actually peeled back the layers of onion on some of these bills and see some of the stuff. You're like,
Yeah,
you look at the Hurricane
right.
Sandy bill. It's like, how the heck did some of this stuff get in? I mean, and that's what a lot of the Republicans in Congress are saying. It's like, we can't attach all this pork to these bills.
Right, yeah.
Right? But I mean, there's so much money that gets thrown into those things to do so many little pet projects that, you're thinking, well, heck, yeah, sure, there should be, $100 million to support sustainable buildings or resilient buildings, so that, when the next disaster comes, it's much better, is more resilient, and doesn't have the same kind of disaster. But there's no appetite for it. They don't want to spend the money on that. They want to spend the money on something else, naming a bridge for themselves in some gorge in their backwater of their county. I don't know. I mean,
right.
That's how it works, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're a big boy, you know this,
Yeah.
right? Come on, Dirk.
No, come on, man. Don't do it.
But it's that's all the issues we talked about in this show are certainly tied around these same issues of, what do you do? How do you recover from disasters? How do you, as quality professionals, think about risk mitigation and disaster recovery?
And actually, just to finish up, it actually, in a sense, what we were just talking about, it does. There's two prongs to it. One is, what is the government, whether it's federal, state, local,
Right.
what are they going to do for you? But also, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What
for
are you
yourself?
going to do? And knowledge is just understanding what the issues are, understanding what
Yep.
the capabilities are that are out there. Just makes you more informed, and also, if you're an active voter and so forth, well, if you understand more what the issues are, then when bond issues come up and so forth,
You
that
can
might
vote.
be infrastructure. Well, you're going to know more what they're talking about.
Yeah, you can see. You can maybe see the USGPC and understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's important stuff. All right, thanks, Derek. Thanks, Laurel. Really good article, Laurel. Thank you for giving us a lot to talk about on this show today. Well, that's.